So, surprise, I have the honor of asking them a few questions. Now, these are not my questions, these are questions from the audience. So, the first one, when you speak with business people, you often hear them use the word uncertainty. They are uncertain about taxes, they are uncertain about the recovery of our economy, they are uncertain about the Affordable Health Care Act. What should we be doing to bring more certainty and sustainability to the business community? Senator Graham.
Well, uncertainty is spawned by Washington not being able to do a whole lot of things to give you certainty. Agreed? Like passing a budget. You know, we've had one continuing resolution after another. Thank God we passed a budget in the normal course of business. So for 2 years, we'll have a number to shoot toward. But Tim nailed it. Obamacare, I think, is strangling the economy. Every Democrat voted for it, every Republican voted against it, and I think is coming home to roost in terms of what we said would happen. But from a Republican point of view, we got to do more than complain about Obamacare. We need to come up with our own health care reform, because the old way of doing business didn't work either. Monopolies are not good. I mean, before Obamacare, you had very small choices in individual states. Tim and I believe in buying insurance wherever you can get the best price. A little malpractice reform would go a long way, and quite frankly, if you smoke, you ought to pay more. Just basic, simple things. So what I think will happen on the tax side is that the big deal that I described may yet happen. Have you heard of Simpson Bowles? Mm-hmm. Let's do something like that. Let's simplify the tax code to make it easy. I don't know if how many of you are for a flat tax? Okay, what about a fair tax? I don't care, just as long as we do something other than what we're doing. Simpson Bowles eliminated a lot of deductions and took some of the money to buy down rates to get us to a corporated 25, not 35, and put some money on the debt. But what they also suggest is that we reform entitlements. 2/3 of the federal budget spending is in entitlements and interest on the debt. 1/3 is the discretionary budget. So if you really want to stop us from becoming Greece, we have to do the big deal. And I think tax code reform, where Republicans will embrace simplifying the tax code and dedicating some revenue to debt reduction, will spawn some interest by Democrats to reform entitlements. And that will give you certainty. As to Obamacare, the one thing I'm certain about, that this was never about the 10% of people who are uninsured. We want to help the uninsured. But do we really want to destroy insurance for the rest of us? I think it's about destroying private sector health care, hurting us all into exchanges where the government will run these exchanges. I think it's doing through the back door what they couldn't do through the front door, which is universal coverage where the government decides who gets what. I think that's a bad idea for America. And until you get Obamacare replaced with a bipartisan product, you're going to have a hard time growing your business.
My first bill in Congress a couple of years ago was the Rising Tide Tax Reform Act of 2011. And its goal was to lower the corporate tax rate down to 23%, allow for permanent repatriation so that we could have an ignition, so we could ignite a fire around economic development, and specifically for small businesses as well. When I think about that construct, the second iteration, if I have the opportunity to do so, to create certainty for our business community, is I would look at the manufacturing opportunities and lower the manufacturer's tax rate to about 20% for a couple of reasons. With the natural gas prices being what they are today, we find ourselves in a competitive position where we could attract industry to America that would stay here permanently if we could continue to have an energy environment that was conducive for landing here, and then a tax environment that kept them here. If we did those two things, I think we would see an amazing renaissance throughout our state. We're seeing it throughout the country because of our energy opportunities, which is another obvious example of why we need to make sure that the type of regulatory reform that happens takes into consideration first the people, because we're missing that component. 9 million jobs a day are focused around the oil and gas industry. We could see that number grow by more than 1 million jobs in the next decade, and add another $1 trillion to our GDP if we kept the federal government out of regulating things like hydraulic fracking. So we have a strong opportunity to continue to see more manufacturers, more businesses land on our soil and create a root system if we eliminate the regulatory overhead and the tax problems that we currently have. Those two things, I believe, would create certainty in our economy.
So a few months ago, I had the honor of spending the day with both senators in Washington. I got to run behind them as they ran to meetings in the hallways of the Capitol building, and it was an amazing experience. And that leads me to this next question. What do you like most about being a senator, and what do you like least?
Let Tim go first.
That's what I like least about being a senator. Being the junior one, that is. That was a joke. Anyways, for me, I'll tell you that, interestingly enough, I'm a Southern boy. I truly love South Carolina. So one of the things I like least about being a senator is you can't do it from South Carolina. You actually have to go to Washington and do your job part of the week. The thing I like most about being a senator is having an opportunity to travel the country, and specifically travel our state, and focus my attention on the opportunities to have conversations with high school students throughout South Carolina. I have found amazing potential in our schools. Some of the most brilliant people that we've ever seen are locked in our schools, and to the extent that we can unlock their potential, I think we'll find ourselves in a strong position. On a serious note, the least attractive thing about being in the Senate really is the partisanship. One of the things I experienced with Rita Ellison and Tommy Stringer and others who are in the room tonight is that even though those of us who are Republicans, we would have strong disagreements with our Democrat friends, at the end of the day, we'd huddle together and try to do what was in the best interest of South Carolina. Sometimes I feel like we're missing the point that people aren't looking for Republican solutions or Democrat solutions. They're looking for American solutions. And we get locked in this psyche about partisanship.
Amen. As a lifestyle, it sucks. But I really enjoy the job a lot more than the problems that come. I live in the back of my car as a lifestyle. Got 240,000 miles on it, by the way. Sell it to you if you want it. Buy me a BMW next. Over in Greer. You know, I got on the plane in Washington about 2 weeks ago, and the flight attendant says, "This is flight, 123, going to Greer, South Carolina." The lady jumped up by me and says, I gotta go. So why? Says, "I'm going to Greenville." I said, "Trust me, you will get there." So anyway, you know what I like most about being a senator is having a say. I've been a lawyer, and I'm for the loser pay rule, even though I'm a lawyer. If you sue somebody, great. If you lose, you ought to pay the cost. To all the lawyers in the room, we can do better. Now, the bottom line is, representing our state and my nation, I've been an Air Force officer for 31 years. Tim's 2 brothers are in the military. He comes from a military family. But wearing the uniform of the United States Air Force has been one of the highlights of my life. You're representing your nation. When you're a lawyer, you represent individual clients. I've represented towns and municipalities and counties, and I've learned a lot about the burdens of local government. But trying to find a way forward is intriguing to me. How do you get Democrats and Republicans in a room to give a little bit to move us all forward? You know the big deal I talked about, entitlement reform? I can tell you this, no Democrat is going to vote to adjust the age of retirement and to means test benefits unless Republicans are willing to simplify the tax code and take some of the money to pay down debt. That's sort of the Simpson-Bowles model. Immigration is a trade-off. You got the business community here dying to get more visas. Believe it or not, it's hard to find workers in certain parts of our economy. Do you agree with that? Yes. Anybody ever worked in a chicken processing plant? Anybody want to go back there? So we need labor. You know, if a kid graduates from Clemson from India and gets a PhD, why in the world should they go back to India to compete against us? Give them a green card. Let them stay here. Let them be part of America because they add value. So immigration reform is about economic growth. When you're losing 80 million workers, if you don't have a rational immigration system, you can't grow your economy. It's about national security. It's about our culture. So the Chamber of Commerce is a big supporter of immigration reform. You want more visas. You need more high-skilled and low-skilled workers. Guess what? The Hispanic community wants some way forward for the 11 million who live in the shadows. And one's not going to get something unless the other does. There'll never be an immigration bill where the chamber gets everything they want on the business side unless you deal rationally with 11 million. And the 11 million are not going to move forward without a guy like me and Tim who represent the chamber's interest. That's what I like most about politics, is trying to take entrenched positions and see if you can move forward. I'm not married, but that's as close as I want to get. Thank you very much.